welcome to 5 Questions with LeRoy Butler. We're here post-Packers 50-point victory. First time in history they've scored 50 points back-to-back games.
It's amazing.
I've heard that stat so much this past week, it's
really
ingrained in my head. It's what first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah, right.
50
First thing you think of, you wake up, is how great of a player I was.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Let's talk about the home dominance here.
Yeah.
And, you know, I actually went back and looked at the 96 season.
Yeah.
Because that was the first thing that came to my mind was how many blowouts there were in that season. And it was just, it started with that Philadelphia game at home, and you just knew something was special about that team. Now, this team didn't start out like that, but they're kind of in that position now. Do you think it's a matter, is it too early to make that judgment that, you know, this is a team that's hot, getting hot at the right time, and they're that good? Should we make that judgment now?
Well, I think so. I think you got to compare it to something, because if you look at the scope of the entire NFL, there's only a few teams that's undefeated at home, and maybe one team, Dallas, I think, undefeated on the road. So if you can win your games and get that Lambeau mystique back as a home field advantage, you feel good about your football team. Now, I will say this. It's a measuring stick when you play New England, but not to look past Minnesota on the road. But it just seems like at home, the crowd gets everybody pumped up, and you've been seeing some great things. Certain players play great at home. And it's just something about playing at home. But over the years, you've seen some upsets every now and then.
Yeah,
the Giants in the playoffs. I mean, San Francisco in the playoffs. I mean, so maybe that's starting to change a little bit.
It has not been a slam dunk to win at home. And in fact, in some years, I think, including the Super Bowl year, I think they were better on the road when they played inside.
Yep.
You know, they were a better turf team than they were.
Yep.
But this team might be a little different because of Lacey, just some of the way they're playing.
Yeah.
They may be a little bit better at home. But again, you bring up a good point. They're dominating at home, but let's see what happens in the playoffs, because they got to win a home playoff game.
Yeah, because one and done doesn't get it done anymore, especially if you get a home playoff win. Now, with Detroit losing to Arizona, see, now you bring those hot teams that started out back to the pack. So this is the right time to get hot. The final, like 6 or 7 games, teams started be in playoff mode every week.
Yeah, and, you know, home field advantage, I mean, this is really key. They got to win the division, because otherwise they're going on the road. And, you know, right now they would be on the road in Atlanta if they were in the playoffs.
Yeah, 4 and 6 and in first place.
Yeah. Now, I mean, they've got to make use of that home field advantage. Let's talk about the offense and just how well it's clicking right now. Do you think it's a matter of who they're playing, or do you think it's Aaron Rodgers, how well he's playing, or do you think it's a combination, including the offensive line?
Well, the offensive line is obviously there, but I think the guy right there says a lot for how he's been playing. If you look at his home stats, they're staggering at home. I mean, I think, you know, he's at home, I think he had 280-some passes, you know, without an interception or something.
322 now.
I mean, I mean, think about those numbers at home. Some quarterbacks, it's not like you're right, it's not a slam dunk that they play good at home. But I don't think anybody can stop this offense right now. But I will say this, it's on film against Detroit, against New Orleans, and some of these teams, you know, the games they lost, they played 2 high safeties, man underneath, and whatever happens, happens.
And stop Jordy Nelson.
Now, Carolina did that, but they still destroyed them. So I think Mike McCarthy has found a way to not to necessarily use the tight end when you got 2 high safeties, but he's been putting Jordy Nelson on the inside and trips, and putting Cobb on the inside to stretch the middle of the field. That's the stress of when you get 2 high safeties. I was shocked, really, that Philadelphia played 1 high safety, man underneath. Because nobody can play them like that.
And obviously, it was a bad idea.
And as a matter of fact, the first time they played Minnesota, Minnesota did the same thing. You see the gaudy numbers again.
Yeah.
And up in the 50s. So, you know, if you're going to come in just playing straight man-to-man, you know, they're going to put up some points.
Yeah.
But if you try to slow the game down, play cover two man, you know, blitz from the flex side and roll the corner up to try to take them out of the rhythm, you may have a better chance, but then they'll only put up 38 on you instead of 50.
Keep Jordy Nelson out of the end zone at all costs.
Yeah.
They win. Every
time
he
he
goes,
scores,
they win a game.
And I think a lot of people understand that now, but Jordy Nelson is getting to the level now to where who's the best receivers, not in the NFC, but the NFL. He's in that conversation now. I mean, Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh and Jordy Nelson to me, Demaryius Thomas obviously in Denver. But it used to just be Calvin Johnson and everybody else.
Yeah, well, it still is.
Well,
it still is Calvin Johnson and everybody else.
That's the perception.
It's who you're defined as everybody else.
Yeah, but, you know, like Des Bryant's put up numbers, but I know people say Megatron, but he's been hurt. He hasn't played. He played a great defense against Arizona. Yeah. 5 catches, 59 yards.
Yeah,
so
you can
let's
blame
just
that
see.
on Stafford. If Calvin Johnson was playing with Aaron Rodgers, his numbers would be out of the
But
sky.
Calvin Johnson also put up the same numbers with Matthew Stafford, so you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, well, we'll think.
So I'll take Jordy Nelson. I mean, it's just awesome.
All right. Well, we've talked plenty about Clay Matthews and the move to inside linebacker, and we will show what kind of an impact that has in X's and O's. But I sort of want to talk about how this has been possible, and part of it, I think, is Julius Peppers, having Julius Peppers there. If you think about how versatile he is, the way they're using Matthews, they've sort of found a way to use Peppers as a linebacker, as a defensive end, as a defensive tackle. He's a pretty versatile guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I remember when we first, some of the guys were talking about it, and then when the Packers made pretty much the switch, they chose to get Peppers instead of Jared Allen in Chicago. Who's going to get the best of that deal? And all the Chicago people were saying, oh, you got a washed-up guy, he loafs, he doesn't play hard, and all this kind of stuff. And then you come back and put him in a defense that he's comfortable in. He got 2 pick sixes for this year. Most DBs don't even get that.
Yeah.
But now you put your 2 best players in a position that they can affect the game. Matthews' tackles and sacks are going to go up. Also, you'll see Peppers, his impact will go up. Real quick, the Green Bay Packers showed Philadelphia something they hadn't seen. They see Matthews as a middle linebacker with A.J. Hawk in the nickel, but he walked to the outside and blitzed and got a sack, and Chip Kelly said, we've never seen them do that, so kudos to them.
Yeah.
So that's Don Capers coming up with new things to put his guys in position. So it just makes you feel refreshed about it. Now, statistically, they may not measure up.
No, they're still giving up a lot of yards.
Give up a lot of yards,
who cares?
but the eye test is how many points you give up.
Right. And right now they
got
rank
4
17th.
turnovers.
Yeah, and turnovers they're plus 14 in the turnover margin.
That's crazy.
So that's usually a sign of a good team.
Yep.
You mentioned Detroit, and this thing could be a slugfest all the way to the end. But what's interesting is Detroit plays at New England next week, and then New England comes and plays the Packers. So New England could play a big role in the future of the NFC North. But should Green Bay even pay attention to what Detroit's doing, or do they need to just focus on what they're doing?
Since they got Detroit at home late in the year, they can control their own destiny if you're the Green Bay Packers, and because you're going to play them. But you have to concentrate on the NFC, Detroit as well, and what you're doing. And I think that's what McCarthy does a good job of, is keeping his guys with the blinders on to say, listen, we have to just keep moving one game at a time. Don't look past anybody, but also ride the hot wave. Have the confidence to know that you can beat anybody.
Okay, well, that's an interesting way to put it, because you could go riding into Minnesota really confident and then wind up being Denver against St. Louis. This is I've said it every week. It's a crazy NFL.
It really
you can't
is.
Predict anything. Minnesota could win this game easily.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because I didn't think the Jets 2 weeks ago could beat Pittsburgh after Roethlisberger had 6 touchdowns.
Right.
Every week is 3 upsets. Every week is 3 upsets. You just don't want to be one of those 3 upsets.
Yeah.
Because if you're the Packers, every NFC game is a must-win, because you can't have 4 losses in the conference.
Yeah.
That, when you go to all these tiebreakers and all this stuff, it can look bad for you. So, you have to win these NFC games, especially in your division.
Right. Okay, well, be sure you join us in X's and O's. We've got a look at Clay Matthews and his impact, and we also have a look at Aaron Rodgers and just how hot he is.
Yeah, he's on fire.
Throwing the ball. We will see you next week after the Minnesota game.